Right, I think we're live. Here we are. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm seeing some comments. Looks like we're live and we can start. So welcome to that exciting session about deep tech AI teams, how to build them, and what diversity means and how to achieve it, and what we think about it. And we'll start with an introduction of our awesome panel. We're all French. Some of us, I mean, actually a majority of us live in the US here. And I think we have a really interesting mix there. So we'll start with Camille. You wanna start by telling us about your background, your company, where you are at, and most importantly, tell us how many engineers you have in your team, and what's the breakdown between AI or deep tech and more standard tech, and what are your plans to hire in the next 12 months?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'm actually the only one who's in Paris, and it's freezing and raining. So I hope the weather is better where you guys are. So I'm a co-founder and co-CEO of Goshaba. Goshaba is a technology that pre-qualifies candidates. So we help large companies recruit. Basically, Goshaba is the technology that will replace the resume in the future. We think the resume is a really inefficient way to select candidates because on the resume, certain people know how to sell themselves, or some people went to the right schools, and these people get selected, but it has nothing to do with their actual potential, their actual skills, right? It's impossible to actually detect the skills from the resume. So Goshaba is a technology that's based on cognitive science and video game that qualifies candidates. I'm a researcher. I have a PhD from France. I was working at Harvard in the past, my past academic job. And that's where I got the idea for this technology, because the science I was using to evaluate people's skills, cognitive skills, at some point it became available on laptops and smartphones. And so that's how Goshaba was born. So today we work with large corporations like BNP, McDonald's, this type of companies. We have 25 people today. Of the 25 people, 5 of them are salespeople, so 20 people are engineers or PhDs. It's mostly regular tech, and I have 3 people who are doing more like machine learning, data science, and cognitive science. Yeah, I think that's it. So I will be speaking both as the founder of a deep tech company and as a person who actually runs a technology for recruiting. I think both are interesting perspectives. We can hear you, Alex.
Mute. Classic. Sorry. Yeah, I was saying I can't hear to hear your feedback on hiring process, resume, how to process all that, and I've had ups and downs and different kinds of vision in setting up my hiring process, ranging from like 3-day interviews to no interviews, and I don't think if any of that works. So it's a great topic. Awesome. Did you raise money from VC? Did you self-finance the company? What's the status?
Yeah, so we started the company mostly with, France is a really nice country. We have startup grants that are non-dilutive. So we started with about 500,000 euros of basically free money. And a year and a half ago, we raised 3 million euros 2 million euros in dilutive, and then the rest in non-dilutive, with VCs in France like Daphne. I mean, pretty good VCs. It was one of the largest seed rounds the year that we raised it.
Awesome. Cool. All right, thanks, Camille. Now let's talk about Clement. What's the story, Clement? Can you tell us a little bit about your personal story, how you ended up in New York? We're all neighbors, by the way, Clement, JB, and me.
Yeah.
How did you end up here? What is the amazing story of your company? And what's the breakdown of your team? And what are your plans to hire?
Yeah, I've been in deep tech for like almost 10 years now. First job I had was at a company called Moodstocks back in Paris, that some of the OGs of the deep tech scene might remember, that was doing computer vision that got acquired by Google. And I'm the co-founder and CEO at Hugging Face, that we started when I was in New York already, and my co-founders Julien and Thomas are in Europe. And what we do at Hugging Face is leading the field of natural language processing, which is the ability for machines to understand text. We've been lucky to build an open source library called Transformers, which is today the most popular open source technology for natural language processing, that thousands of companies all over the world are using to do things like text classification, information extraction, summarization, translation, all type of kind of like natural language processing. We have almost 40,000 GitHub stars on it, almost 700 contributors. So when I describe the team, I say that we're 30 full-time team members and 700 part-time team members, because they're kind of like contributing really in a meaningful way to the technology we're building. In terms of like a breakdown of the team, I usually say them kind of like the dumbest of the team, or the least technical of the team. So right now we really only have scientists and engineers, and we'll be able to talk about it after. But the way we do it is that we don't really differentiate the two, so I can't really give like a breakdown between the two. And so far we raised a bit more than $20 million, mostly from US investors, with our latest round, 15 million Series A, in December last year. And we split between Paris and New York, with actually the biggest team in Paris, and then obviously a lot of people remote all over the world, given the current COVID situation.
Thanks, Clement. Can you run an interview process with Hugging Face, or can you run an interview automatically?
Yeah, I wish I could. We actually started the company working on open domain conversational AI.
Okay.
So we were doing a friendly chatbot. That's still one of the toughest natural language processing challenges. So hopefully in a few years, if we do a good job at it.
Awesome, thanks. And congrats on the nice round that you raised that year. JB, tell us your story and what you're building now, which is not software.
It's partly software.
Yeah, it's part of software. AI, but applied to a very, practical and, crucial thing. So I'll let you talk about it.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for having me here. So my company is on the earlier stage. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Biosciences. And so what we do there is we learn how to write better DNA for use in gene therapy. So gene therapy is a very simple idea. You have a broken gene. Let's just give you the good one. But actually doing it is a bit complicated. And so we need to learn how to do that well. And we think we can do that through machine learning and synthetic biology. It's pretty precise, pretty deep tech. So I came to the US in 2005, I think 15 years ago, after my engineering studies in France. I did my PhD in systems biology and worked in data science at Harvard, built a few companies, I want to say, well, really like embryos of companies. Then worked at Palantir, did a lot of recruiting there and team building, moved back to the drug discovery side of Deeptech. So I built the team in New York of a company called Benevolent AI, which is at the intersection of machine learning and drug discovery. So we hired about 30 people here. And now I'm doing this company. So yeah, it's been a great ride. I'm in New York indeed. It's pretty nice outside. And I think it's like, and my team, by the way, also to give a sense, we started over the summer, so we're a handful now. We're all in the US at this point, and we are very much hiring for a particular kind of skills, which is machine learning with a very strong genomics background. So it's a pretty small pool of applicants.
Cool. And you raise a round with Andreessen Horowitz, right?
Correct, which is not public, but this is correct. And we are we did raise a seed round.
Can we edit that?
That's fine. They're great partners. Yeah, so we did raise a seed round of a normal size for a biotech company, and yeah, we're hoping to hire about 10, 15 folks in the next year.
I like the way you say normal size for a biotech company. Anyway, cool, awesome. So let's jump right into it. Thanks for the introduction. By the way, I'm also an entrepreneur. I run a health tech company. We're making hardware, and we also have a team, heavily in AI, machine learning, sensing, signal processing, radar processing, between France and the US. So, first question is US versus France. Everybody raves about French engineers. Some of us are French engineers here, and so of course we love them. But practically, what is your rationale? Why do we want to hire a diverse team in technical team in between France, US, rest of the world? What is your angle? What is your rationale there? And what, of course, COVID changed everything. Now there's no question anymore about, should we work remotely or not? Do you see that as the end goal? Are you going to structure your company like that? Or do you believe that everybody in the same room tackling problems is still a better approach? Maybe we can start with Clement, right? Because you have a clearly distributed team. And you used to have only French people in New York.
Yeah, we've tried a bunch of different things, and I've been in the US first in kind of like on the West Coast and then on the East Coast, and obviously I've seen a lot of friends and fellow French entrepreneurs creating their company and having both a team and an office in France and in the US, and I think now you're starting to have really established examples that prove that it can work really well like that. I mean, one of the earliest ones that I'm always looking up to is Dashlane, for example, with really large teams, both kind of in New York and in Paris. I think it's a matter of taking advantage of the strength of both sides. In the US, obviously you can get the money, like the VCs, you get the market here, you get kind of like the experience depending on what you're building of creating a large company. And then in France, you get like the amazing science and engineering talents. You get them cheaper than you would get them in the US. You get them more kind of like stable than you would in the US. And so it's a matter of taking advantage, I think, of both trends. And kind of like frankly reducing the risk to a little bit. I mean that's interesting because before my wife, I'm going to take like more like a personal example, but my wife is American, and for a long time, like people were telling me, oh, you're so lucky, your wife is American, you'll be able to live in the US. And then when Trump got in, people started telling my wife, oh, you're so lucky, your husband is French, you'll be able to move to France if you want to. And the same for the teams, actually, when you started to have more challenges to bring people to the US because the visa started to be harder. It's actually an advantage and kind of like an unfair advantage as a company to be able to have a team in a different country in France and be able to, for example, hire all over the world and bring people to Paris, which is something that we've done. So I think that's mostly why we're doing it, why a lot of companies are doing it now successfully, I think.
Cool. I mean, and one of the differences I noticed is the way you hire. So when you hire salespeople, it's very different if you hire somebody in France or in the US. I think on the tech side there could be some differences too. Maybe Camille, do you have any insight on that? I mean, you cater. Do you work mostly with French company? Did you also study a little bit what's happening in the US and what the cultural or market differences would be?
Yeah, so I think there's two things that I wanted to share. So one is in terms of, I think it's great to have a diverse team and to have people in the States, in France, etc. The only thing team is small. I know for us, when we're just 25 people, it's good to make sure that people overlap in their working days. So right now, the reason we want to have everybody on the same timeline, it doesn't matter where they are in Europe, but we want them in Europe because we want to be sure that we have at least 6 hours where we can work together. Then the other thing that, and I must say, COVID really helped with the remote work. I really wanted to put the company full remote for many years, and neither my investors or my partners were okay with that. And now everybody's okay with that, obviously. So that was one good thing for me of that crisis. The other thing about differences, one thing that I've noticed, and it's something that's relatively known in industrial and organizational psychology, is the different relationship with work. So Americans and Anglo-Saxon tend to have a relationship with work that's transactional. So I give you my time, you give me money. Whereas Latin countries have a relationship with work that's more emotional and irrational. So it's very important. I think, like, if you're American and you're going to come and hire French people, I think it's important to be able to take that dimension into account. Although probably it's maybe less true with engineers. I'm not saying engineers don't have emotions, but just, the transactional aspect may be easier. I think that's why Google is taking so many French engineers, for instance. It's because culturally there's less of a gap. But in general, that's one thing that's known is the transactional versus emotional type of relationship with work.
Did you? I mean, yeah, I think that's a great comment. Like, did you say emotion? That's what you. No. So I mean, yeah, the relationship with your company is very different. I think there used to be a time. I think it's changed a little bit, but where the perks and the environment you needed to set up for an American engineer was like a lot, more comfortable. There was a lot more expectation than in France. That tends to level off now, I think. But yeah, it's that's very true. JB, on your side, you're looking for very specific profiles. I'm assuming you're ready to hire them anywhere in the world, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I think, and by the way, just regarding what you said, Camille, I think it might depend on what the company does as well. Like, for instance, when I was hiring last year and 2 years ago for Benevolent AI in New York, we hire people from out of Google, out of IBM, out of companies, and the pitch is very simple. It's like, do you want to continue working on, I don't know, ad tech or something, or do you want to help us find drugs that can cure people? And like when you have mission-driven companies, I feel that there's less of people are not transactional, and they really want to, they care for the mission and they want to help. And so not all companies are like that, obviously, but when you have a mission-driven company, I haven't seen a difference between hiring here and elsewhere. Just that my 2 cents. But in terms of what we're doing now, indeed, we're looking for, there's a very small number of people who have worked on exactly that problem that we're working on. It involves a particular technique in molecular biology known as massively parallel reporter assays. We want people who have built deep learning networks on that data. So it's tiny. And the way we're going about it is we know the papers that are relevant to our field. We know the labs, the academic labs, where these papers come from. There's basically 20 of them. And so we go after these labs one after the other. We talk to the PIs, we look at the people who've published, we talk to these people. So we try not to poach, but we try to say, hey, like, if you're, we're a nice company, and we'd love your talents at some point.
Friendly poaching.
Yeah. So yeah, we're not to be brutal,
yeah.
right? But I would say that in our case, that's like this approach is the one that we need to take, as opposed to in other companies.
Benevolent had an interesting way also, where you bought whole labs, right? But you need more funding for that.
Oh, so no, yeah, Benevolent, yeah, we did buy well, it's a separate story, but that was like Benevolent was like mostly a dry lab company, like looking just algorithms, and then they bought we bought, I guess, a computer, actually a physical lab, but it was a lab that was previously built by the founder of the company and then sold it, so it's it was in the family already, I want to say.
Cool. Okay, guys, I'm seeing that time is flying actually, and there's one topic I wanted to address, and I know it's it's a topic that creates a lot of conversation in general, but gender breakdown, right? Um, so gender breakdown is always a topic in tech teams, and it's always something we want to achieve. I mean, as far as I know, um, where are we all in there? What do we think about it? Is it, I mean, and let's speak bluntly, right? Is it some kind of moral obligation that we see in building our team, and just to more of a sort of messaging thing that we want to put forward to say, okay, we want to hire a diverse team, but do we really want to make it happen? And if so, how do we do it? And if not, why are we failing? Can you share a little bit about where you stand there? I mean, my experience, I've succeeded and I've failed, and currently I'm failing, and I really want to fix it. I've never found a way to, I never found a real recipe to make it work. So, who wants to take the lead on the conversation?
Because we're like the smallest of the bunch, so right now we don't really, like statistically speaking, we don't really have a problem because we're so small. But I would say that given the small pool of applicants we're looking into, it's difficult because the diversity in all its forms is not well represented in this particular small number of people. So that's one issue that we're particularly having. I would say that in general, what I've observed, but I think it's different from everybody, what I've observed is taking it slowly is helpful. Like if you want to create a team of 10 people in the next 6 months, well, you might have to cut a few corners. But if you, and that may not be I mean, sometimes that's your constraint, right? But if you want to build a team that, if your diversity is important to you, I think giving you the time to do that is actually has been helpful to me. And the second is surrounding you with people who can open your networks to places that you might not have looked otherwise.
That makes sense. Camille, I think you had great views also on what diversity is and how to promote it and make it work within your company.
Yeah, so I think there's one thing that I wanted to say before that is that I think before achieving diversity, it's important to think about inclusion. And like, I think that's one of the most important thing when your company is growing is before thinking, okay, I want more women, more people from different countries, more XYZ, it's important to know what that you've built or you're able to build a culture of inclusion, and inclusion is harder to create than diversity. That's why so many diversity programs fail. Because it's not the same thing to say, oh, I'm going to put a quota and then just find some women that, I don't even know if they're good or not and put them here. The question is, if you promote a culture of inclusion, and at least that's my experience in my company, and that's the experience I see from recruiting for McDonald's, Accenture, etc. I mean, this is volumic recruiting, so it's it makes sense for when you recruit a lot of people. Once you have a culture of inclusion, your sourcing is naturally going to be diverse. And I think that's what we observed in large companies. That's what we observed in our company, because a lot of your best hires are going to come from your current employees. So again, if you have if you only have white males coming from top schools, from very rich backgrounds, it's possible that it will be harder to attract, I don't know, like a person from Moroccan descent who comes from the suburbs, because they may not feel welcomed. So I think it's important to have a culture of inclusion more than diversity in the first place. And I agree with what you're saying, JB. I think also diversity should not be an artificial problem. I think diversity is a problem when you start having a number of people in your company where it makes sense to be diverse. When it's just you and your two best friends, okay, well, if it so happens that you're 3 white males, fine, so be it. Doesn't matter. But then what is your company going to look like when you're 150 people? And so that's kind of my 2 cents on the story. And just one thing I want to add, because we know that diversity problem is a systemic problem. It's not a person's problem. It's just that we are in a society that promotes men to positions of power. It's not a matter of women being incompetent. It's just a matter of a system just feeding always the same schemes. I mean, we know, Trump had, I don't know, I will take the risk to say that he was incompetent. but he could be there because he's a man. There's no way an incompetent woman at that level would be there. So we know that this society promotes men in a systemic manner. I think that diversity is a thing we're doing. Diversity is just trying to promote some sort of social justice. And one thing that I want to add on this is that what we do when we work with large companies is, in order to promote diversity, we de-bias recruiting. Right? So the first step is to de-bias recruiting. How do you do that? You can't do blind resumes or anonymous resumes. It's too difficult. So use technology. Ours is one, but there's tons of technologies like that that will help you, one, define what are the key criteria to succeed in a job in an objective way. You have to define them. Then you test people on these objective criteria. And then you'll see what you get at the end. Maybe you'll get 100% white males, maybe not.
No, that's a great point about inclusion and creating an environment where, actually candidates feel welcome, and feel like it's they're in an environment that's friendly to them. Actually, that's a great point.
Maybe I can add, like, I think very, very good points from all the speakers. I totally agree with them. And you were asking, Alex, like, is that a moral obligation? I think it is a moral obligation, and it is also like a practical obligation for companies. When we talk about our topics, for example, at Hugging Face, if you want to make sure to spot the biases in kind of like the data sets in the models, you have to come with a team that is diverse. And at Hugging Face, and I'll be kind of like fully transparent, we really good at nationality diversity, obviously, because we're in the US and in France, but also we have a lot of other nationalities in the team: Chinese, Indians, other countries in Europe. Pretty good at racial and background diversities. We have people without any diploma, people with PhDs. We're still struggling with gender diversity, something that I'm really kind of like trying to work on a lot. It's not easy, but hopefully by working on it and kind of like improving our culture, improving our practices in the coming months and coming years, we'll be able to get better at that, and our whole field in general, to be honest.
Cool. And I think we had an interesting conversation when we were preparing the panel, right? I mean, I was going to move on to trying to get some practical tricks to make it work. So debiasing the resumes and having a pipeline that's diverse is important too, right? I mean, I don't know who mentioned that. One of you guys said, I want a pipeline of resume that's big enough so that I have enough diversity in it, and I won't be biased by just my funnel. Actually, I think that's a great one. There's also some don'ts, right? I mean, I just realized, thanks to you guys, that I told my team, guys, we don't hire guys anymore, only women now. It's actually illegal, right? You can't do that. So that's, especially when you're in the US, you got to be a little bit careful with these things. So cool. Do you guys have any other tricks to share on building
there is just
team?
In terms of practical tools, there's just a few things that are obvious to me, but I don't know if they are to most people, because since it's my field, I kind of lost track with what's obvious or not. But when we talk about pipeline, so first is it's really hard when you have the problem of singleness, when you have only one woman in a team of 10 people, or only one Black person in a team of 10 mostly white people. So one first advice, I think, is if you decide to hire a woman and right now you're 10 males, maybe hire 3 women at the same time, not just one, because it's going to be really hard for that one person to get all the burden of all the, we all have sexist stereotypes, all of us. So when you're the only one, the only Black person, the only gay person, the only lesbian, the only woman, the only whatever, you're carrying a burden that's like really hard to overcome, and your working capacities are going to be lowered down by that. So one thing is, if you're going to hire, don't hire just one token person, hire more than one. And that also is very clear on the statistics. When you have when you interview people, it's also a very bad idea to interview 2 males, 1 female, because then the female has like 50% less chances to be hired. So it's better to have like 2 and 2 or 2 and 3 or whatever, but try to not have just one of a single type.
Yeah, and I think it's also like you were saying, right? It's about building a culture of that, and yeah, my experience is that I've kind of stopped doing too much interviews and focusing too much on the resumes, and I actually ended up focusing more on the cultural match. We're building a culture of openness and diverse people and people we want to work with, and we have one simple rule, which is no asshole. We only want people we want to work with. Even if they're super sharp, we want people we want to work with. It's much more important than anything else in my experience, actually. Awesome. I think we have questions from our attendants. Let me see. I'm not seeing any questions yet. Okay, so no questions yet. We will then talk about another topic I have in mind, which is money, right? We're in the US. Salaries in the US for engineers, especially in machine learning, are insane. And then there's a actually we have questions. Sorry about that. Okay, let's move on to the questions, because our attendants have interesting questions there. Boom, boom, boom. First question: is there any specific area of expertise between US and French candidates? And I think we should keep that in the machine learning, AI, deep tech world. Do you see specific areas where Americans are really good in machine learning, AI, or how would you qualify the differences in skills between American and French or European engineers? Clement, you have a good experience in that, right?
Yeah, but I've kind of like stopped doing things like that because I feel like a lot of it is and end up being kind of like a cliche. My experience is that any kind of skill that you require and that you're looking for, you can find great people that are French. You can find great people that are American. Otherwise, I feel like you kind of like overgeneralize things, and then in your kind of like hiring process, you end up kind of like targeting one rather than the other.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that might be something that changed in the past 5-10 years, where I think the tech population has pretty much leveled up. I mean, if you go to Japan, France, Finland, wherever, people read the same stuff, they use the same tool, they code the same way, and they think the same way. So I think that pretty much leveled off, in my opinion, right? Camille and JB, do you have any opinion on that?
The same as like 100% agree with Clement.
Cool. Next question. Tyler from the US. Tyler did a BA in French, and I've worked in products in big companies, and he wants to work in Europe. Thoughts on how to leverage language with large company towards a European opportunity? I mean, that's English is super important with any large company, right? But I think in the deep tech machine learning world, it's a given, right? Or do you still have problem with language? I mean, that's a real question, actually. Do you have problem with language?
I think, in my experience, all deep tech French companies either work in English or are able to work in English, so I don't think that would be a problem. Then there's just the usual thing, which is that, and I think that comes back to the transactional versus non-transactional way to work. I think it's important in French to speak some French at least. Although my husband's American, he works here in a company that speaks only English, and he's fine. I think at our level, usually language is not a problem. And if he wants to check jobs, he can check on Welcome to the Jungle for jobs in companies that will probably speak English.
And especially in product, I know France overall is trying to attract talents in areas where there's a little less, like product marketing. So that's probably
there's really easier ways to get visas, and So.
Do you guys have? Can
I add something just on that? I would kind of disagree, because I think it's nowadays most people do speak English, but I think it's a different thing speaking English and speaking it well. when we think about like efficient collaboration, when we think about talking to clients, convincing clients, convincing investors, convincing partners, what I've seen, and I think what is still important in companies, is that people actually work on their language skills, which can be for American people to speak better French or for French people to speak better English. But I haven't seen it really practical to just assume that everyone speaks the other people's language well. And so I would still like encourage people to, you know, like if they want to speak better English, to spend time in the US, you know, like interact with people, take classes, you know, like in today's world, it sounds like so some people assume that you don't need classes, but actually you can take classes at any level in any language to improve your skills. And it's going to be really beneficial to you because you'll be able to communicate better, to understand other people better, to convince better. So yeah, I wouldn't make that a non-issue at all. I would actually recommend everyone to work on it. We're a bit biased because we're a language technology company, so we look at language a lot, and you can see how speaking differently can really affect the outcome of communication and conversations and negotiations. So yeah, I would still encourage people to work on their language skills. That goes a long way to kind of like make them, I think, more successful and achieve more of their goals, I think.
And I think that also goes within the tech team, right? I was about to say, so language is very connected with cognition and the way you think, right? So I've noticed that at the beginning of my company, we're all French in the tech team. So we would do all the meetings in French. And then all of a sudden we had a German guy and an American guy who started speaking English. Do you think, like I think there, that the quality of the interaction goes down when you do that? Or doesn't it doesn't change anything? And that back to Clement's point, actually.
I think, sorry, one thing, when I said that, I was thinking about machine learning, AI, like engineering positions, where most startup companies that I know in Paris they're fluent in English. But if you're thinking about talking to clients, which in French are going to be speaking French, talking about other partners, then I agree that it's important to learn the language. And it goes to your point that yes, the quality is going to decrease if people don't have a good mastery of the language. But I think in technology jobs, English is okay. But if you start doing sales or customer success or even product, then yeah, it's important to speak the local language.
Cool. We have 2 minutes left. JB, do you have anything to add on that topic?
I don't. I agree with everything.
All right, cool. So my last question to you guys. We just lost a very powerful figure, in my opinion, Tony Hsieh, right? He died last week. And he had a completely radical vision of HR. And my question to you is, are you more Tony Hsieh or Jack Ma? Are you more, wolves and rabbits like Jack Ma? Are you more radical transparency and complete flat organization like Tony Hsieh? Camille? Tony Hsieh, Jack Ma, none of the above.
Yeah, I think none of the above. I think I have, I don't know, the way I work and the way I recruit is so rooted in my history and my past that, that obsession I have with diversity just comes from the fact that I come from a super poor background and my mother was born in Nigeria. So I think my obsession is revealing people's potential and working with people who feel comfortable in my company, whatever their background is. So I would say that's my mark on recruiting.
Clement?
I don't know if I'm familiar enough with like what they're kind of like preaching to give you an answer on that. But yeah, I mean, my conviction in terms of like management and hiring is that a lot of people are trying to build kind of like general rules or things that like apply to everything, everywhere, everyone. But at the end of the day, I think it's very much of like a personal matter. So like when I think we're trying to hire or trying to kind of like see how people can develop within the company, I usually listen more than I talk, trying to kind of like understand how can we put people in positions that match their skills, that match, you know, what they want to do, where they want to be happy. And then take it. I think just asking these questions, you solve a lot of problems already, and then you can kind of like have a general framework for it. But most of the time, I think it's going to be special cases, and you're gonna have to adapt to the fact that I think leading or managing is like a human problem, right? So like you have to adapt to the human you have in front of you, I think.
Cool. The natural laziness of the mind, right? Find rules where there's no rules, all right? Cool. JB.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really recruiting is so important because that's really where it all starts. Like how you make what company you're going to be building is who you have in the company. And for me, I think the no asshole thing is really important, but like the way it translates, I think, is kindness. We're looking for kind people. We're obviously looking for brilliant people. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do what we need to do. But of those, we need the kind ones, those who like are open to other points of views and who like want to help each other. And that's really important in my view.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. That was a great panel. I learned a lot, and I hope our attendants learned a lot too. And I think we're right on time, and we can all leave the stage and encourage everyone to reach out if they want to chat more. And good luck with hiring your Deeptech teams in France, Europe, across the world, wherever. And see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you all
everyone.
for.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Take care.